The sirens wailed through the streets of West Oakland, but the Panthers didn't flinch. Huey Newton stood tall, black beret tilted, shotgun at his side, not aiming, just watching. Bobby Seale stood next to him, fists clenched, voice steady as he read the law aloud to the officers trying to intimidate them. Cameras flashed. Children peeked through cracked windows. The world had never seen black men like this. Disciplined, armed, and unafraid. This wasn't just resistance. This was revolution with a spine. And it all started with two young brothers who dared to believe that black people deserved more than survival. They deserved power. Bobby Seale was the son of a carpenter, born in Liberty, Texas, and raised in the back streets of Oakland. His early life was one of hand-me-downs, handouts, and hard truths. Segregation wasn't theory. It was the shape of his world. He had a mind that questioned everything, especially the systems designed to keep him in his place. In the U.S. Air Force, he learned discipline, but when he stood up to racism within its ranks, he was court-martialed. That dishonor would become the seed of his defiance. Huey P. Newton was different, quiet, inward, poetic. Born in Monroe, Louisiana, and brought West Oakland like so many other black families fleeing Jim Crow, Huey wrestled with reading until he taught himself using law books. He wasn't afraid of the dark corners of the city. He studied them. He once said, "I wanted to be a revolutionary, not a criminal, but the streets didn't care what you became." His mind was sharp, hungry for justice, and impatient for change. They met at Merritt College in the early 1960s. The campus was buzzing with debate about Malcolm X, about Africa, about war, poverty, and police brutality. It was in those classrooms and cafeterias that Bobby and Huey began sketching the shape of a movement. The more they talked, the more it became clear. Protests weren't enough. Speeches weren't enough. They didn't just want to talk about revolution. They wanted to build it. They called it revolutionary humanism. A politics of the people. A politics of survival. Two minds, one vision. Before they were legends, they were just two black men who refused to bow. And in each other, they found the spark that would set fire to a nation. It was 1966 in Oakland, California. The streets were restless, filled with poverty, rage, and the ghosts of promises broken. The civil rights movement had won laws but not justice. Police cruisers roamed black neighborhoods like tanks in occupied territory. That's when Huey Newton and Bobby Seale decided it was time. Late nights in Bobby's basement became strategy sessions. Huey brought the fire of Frantz Fanon and the sharpness of legal codes. Bobby brought the organizational grit and the street knowledge to make it real. They studied the Second Amendment as closely as they did Malcolm X. And out of those long nights came a name that would echo through history: the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense. The Panther was chosen deliberately. It doesn't attack unless cornered, but when it does, it fights back with everything. That was their message to Black America. You have the right to defend your life, your dignity, your community. The 10-point program came next. It was a manifesto written not for politicians, but for the people in the projects, in the prisons, on the corners. We want freedom. We want full employment. We want an end to police brutality. These weren't slogans. They were demands, radical in their clarity, righteous in their simplicity. Then came the patrols. Armed with shotguns and law books, Panthers followed police officers through black neighborhoods, standing at a legal distance, ready to intervene, witness, protect. It wasn't violence. It was visibility, a new kind of power. The media called them militants. The FBI called them dangerous. But in East Oakland, mothers called them protectors. Children watched the Panthers in black leather and berets and saw something they'd never seen before: black men unafraid. A movement was born, not just to fight the system, but to reimagine it. The streets of Oakland had never seen anything like it. Young black men and women in crisp black jackets, black berets, and calm, commanding stares stood in formation. They weren't waiting for change. They were delivering it. These were the Black Panther Party patrols, walking proof that the community was done being prey. Everywhere the Panthers went, the ground shifted. When they followed police cars through black neighborhoods, they didn't shout, they observed. Huey Newton made sure everyone knew the law: the right to bear arms, the right to observe public officials, the right to defend oneself. They carried guns, yes, but they also carried law books. And in those early days, they followed the rules to the letter, but power never likes to be watched. Police tried to provoke, intimidate, and trap them. When Huey was arrested in 1967 after a shootout that left Officer John Fry dead and Newton wounded, the party's name exploded onto national headlines. Free Huey became a rallying cry for revolutionaries and radicals from coast to coast. Meanwhile, Bobby Seale organized food programs, clothing drives, medical clinics. The Panthers weren't just about confrontation. They were about community. Children got breakfast before school. Elders got transportation to clinics. These were acts of care that doubled as acts of rebellion in a country that had abandoned its poor. The party grew, first in Oakland, then across California, then nationwide. Chapters opened in Chicago, New York, Los Angeles. They printed their own newspaper, trained their own security, taught political education classes. This was not chaos. It was structure. It was love wrapped in discipline. Still, the more visible they became, the harder the government pushed back. The FBI labeled them a threat to national security. Raids, arrests, assassinations followed. But the Panthers did not flinch. Because in those streets, where bullets flew and hope was scarce, they had become something more than activists. They were soldiers of survival, architects of liberation, and the revolution was just getting started. By the dawn of the 1970s, the Black Panther Party was no longer just a movement. It was a target. Edgar Hoover had declared them the greatest threat to the internal security of the United States. The government moved with surgical precision. Raids at sunrise, informants planted in secret, leaders framed or killed. The war had gone underground. Huey Newton, once the philosopher warrior on the front lines, now found himself trapped between fame and paranoia. After his release from prison, he returned to a party that was growing, but also fracturing. The constant surveillance, the infighting, the weight of leadership. It all began to take its toll. Huey's once clear vision blurred under pressure, and his struggle with addiction darkened the years that followed. Bobby Seale, ever the organizer, tried to hold the party together. He ran for mayor of Oakland in 1973, coming in second with tens of thousands of votes. It was a bold leap from the patrol lines to ballot box, but it showed how far the Panthers had come and how far they still dreamed of going. Yet even Bobby couldn't stop the cracks from spreading. The FBI's COINTELPRO operation sowed chaos from within. Panthers who had once trusted each other began to suspect betrayal at every turn. Fred Hampton was murdered in Chicago. Eldridge Cleaver fled to Algeria. Angela Davis was placed on trial. The party's headquarters were under siege, literally and metaphorically. And yet, in the middle of the storm, the people still came. Mothers still brought their children to the free breakfast programs. Elders still lined up at the community clinics. Panthers still taught classes on Black history, economics, and self-respect. The revolution was bruised, but breathing. Survival pending revolution became more than a slogan. It was a way of life, a declaration that even if the system came with guns and lies, the people would endure. The Panthers had taught them that. They had taught a generation that dignity could not be legislated. It had to be claimed. The dream of liberation still burned, even as the cost grew higher. The Black Panther Party began to fade from the headlines by the late 1970s, but its impact had already carved itself into bones of Black America. Huey Newton and Bobby Seale, two young men who once scribbled revolution on notepads, had sparked a movement that dared to imagine freedom on its own terms. Huey's later years were marked by struggle. In and out of exile, shadowed by his own demons, he found himself alienated from the very revolution he helped ignite. In 1989, at the age of 47, he was gunned down on the streets of West Oakland, feet away from where the Panthers first stood watch. Some called it a tragic end. Others saw it as a reminder. Revolution is not a destination, but a battle waged day by day. Bobby Seale survived, scarred but standing. He became a writer, a teacher, a symbol of resilience. He never stopped educating, never stopped organizing. His voice still thundered with the same fire, but now it carried the wisdom of years and the clarity of hindsight. The party's survival programs laid the foundation for future generations. Today's free school lunches, community clinics, and grassroots organizing owe a quiet debt to the Panthers. They were the first to say, if the government won't protect us, we'll protect ourselves. Artists, scholars, and activists still invoke their names. From Kendrick Lamar to college classrooms, from protests in Ferguson to organizing in Minneapolis, the Panthers live on in every raised fist, in every chant for justice, in every call to defund oppression and fund life. Their story was never just about black power. It was about human dignity, about daring to believe that poor people could rise. That revolution could look like love with structure. Huey and Bobby may have walked different paths in the end, but the road they built together still leads forward. The Panthers' roar may have quieted, but its echo shakes the world. The story of Huey Newton and Bobby Seale is more than history. It's a mirror, a reflection of what happens when ordinary people dare to confront extraordinary injustice. From the streets of Oakland to the pages of Revolution, these two men didn't wait for freedom to be handed down. They built it from the ground up. They taught us that resistance isn't always loud. It can be a child eating breakfast before school, a woman receiving medical care without judgment, a neighborhood knowing it is seen, heard, and protected. That is revolution. That is power. And while the uniforms may have changed and the names may be new, the struggle remains. Police violence, systemic racism, poverty, they persist. But so does the spirit of the Panthers. So does the fire they lit. If their story moved you, if it opened your eyes or sparked a question in your heart, don't let it end here. Subscribe, share, speak. Be part of the generation that refuses to forget and dares to continue what they started. The revolution is not over. It's just waiting for you.